you wanted to print something, you needed to use a movable type press. These were expensive, they were difficult to operate, and they were extremely labor intensive. Now when digital printing came along, it changed the world, because suddenly anyone could print one-off copies of draft text or short runs of whatever they wanted to for just the price of a digital printer. Imagine trying to find your lost dog in the age of movable type. Now, interestingly enough, if you compare a clean room of the 1960s to a clean room of today, where the components for digital printers are made, you won't see a similar renaissance. 90% of the process for making integrated circuits is the same as it was back then, although the mini-skirt lab coat has unfortunately gone out of style. So this last semester, I took Dr. Evans's microelectronic fabrication class right here at SMU. We actually got to go into the clean room and make our own integrated circuits using this old, antiquated process called photolithography, which is the industry standard. Now, it's slow, it's difficult, and it's labor intensive. Just like where printing was in the age of movable type. So one day I raised my hand in class, and I asked why we couldn't have a digital printer for microelectronic devices. Why we couldn't use a simple pico projector and an array of lenses to project our designs directly onto the surface of the wafers without using cumbersome glass plates, which I'll describe in a moment. To my surprise, Dr. Evans stroked his beard and said, "I don't see why you couldn't do that." Oh, there he is. You should try it. So I did. He has the beard still, too. So I went into the optics lab at SMU. And a couple weekends later, I had a working prototype. Today, I'm here to tell you about Lamdalith. Lamdalith is the company that we're forming to bring this disruptive innovation in semiconductor prototyping to market. Andrew's going to start by telling you about why we're qualified to do this. I'll tell you a bit about how photolithography works and how Lamdalith makes it easier for our customers. Glenn's going to acquaint you with the basics of the market, and I'll tell you how we fit into it. I'll also tell you a bit about the risks that we expect to face going into it. Andrew will tell you our go-to-market strategy, and I'll summarize our financials.
So who are we and why are we qualified to speak to you today? Well, I'm Andrew Tremp. I'm a finance undergraduate senior. I competed in this competition last year with Spencer. You may remember we presented Python. I am going to join a Robertson Opportunity Capital, a Dallas-based hedge fund, after I graduate. You already know Spencer Connaughton. He's competed in this competition in the last 2 years. Spencer, as you can already tell, is the genius behind our product, and as such, he is our team leader. Spencer has success with a number of these similar type projects. Also with us on the team, although not up here on stage as they're both full-time faculty, are Dr. Gary Evans and Mr. Jay Kirk. Dr. Evans and Mr. Kirk successfully founded a semiconductor laser company called Photodon, some of whose intellectual property recently sold to Intellectual Ventures. In addition, Mr. Kirk has been a facilities manager in clean rooms for over 30 years. In other words, he's the person who would actually be buying our product, and so as you can imagine, his experience and his insight has been invaluable to us. And finally, we have Glenn Maxey, who's been our workhorse for this project. Glenn is a finance undergraduate sophomore at the Cox School of Business, and he's been a tremendous asset to our team.
So just a warning for those of you who are sensitive to graphic descriptions of technology, you might want to cover your ears for this. This is a photomask. It bears the pattern of one layer of a semiconductor device. Each semiconductor device is built using several dozen of these, or for more advanced designs, up to 100, or more actually. What you do is you place this plate over a silicon wafer coated in photoresist, shine light through it, and just like developing a photograph, emboss the pattern that's depicted on this glass plate onto your silicon wafer. Every time you want to prototype a device, you need to order several dozen of these masks. Each one costs about $1,000 on the low end. So that's tens of thousands of dollars you're shelling out. Also, you can only buy these through external companies. It's not really practical to make them in-house. So you're stuck spending weeks waiting for these masks to get delivered during your prototyping process. If you didn't need these masks, you could save a lot of time and money. And our system does just that. It's very simple. You start by projecting a part of your pattern through a laser projector, through an afocal optic system, through a beam splitter, through a microscope objective onto the surface of the wafer, which is situated in a 3-axis stepper platform, which is connected to a controller, which is controlling what's being shown through the laser projector. A camera views the action through the beam splitter down the microscope objective, reports it back to the controller for auto alignment calibration. Very simple.
In other words, we're taking the current 8-step photomasking process and simplifying it with our product, Lamdalith, which provides a time and cost savings for our customers in a very competitive industry where efficiency is critical. With Lamdalith, our customers can benefit with a payback period after 2 fully developed prototypes and an estimated time savings of 1 week per prototype because of the time saved not waiting for masks to arrive from the distributors. Who are our customers? Semiconductor manufacturing designers, microelectronic developers, and researchers at universities like SMU, government agencies, and any other organization with access to a clean room. In 2011, supplying the semiconductor industry was a $113 billion industry market. And of that, $51 billion was spent on fabrication equipment, and 3.1 of that on photomasks. And Lamdalith, at a small fraction of the capital equipment, looks to provide these customers with an opportunity to really make a huge dent in that photomask budget.
So the reason this works is because of the way the photolithography industry works today. Currently, there are 2 major players, mask makers and e-beam system manufacturers. E-beam systems are at the extreme high end of the market. You can make really precise designs in your silicon wafers with an e-beam. But these systems cost upwards of $80 million and require very specialized training to use. Mask makers make up a vast majority of the photolithography mask market. And companies like Toppin Printing, Dynippon, and Photronics sell customers a wide range of masks for a wide range of costs. Like I said, at the low end, you might pay $1,000 for a mask. And at the extreme high end, for very high precision masks, you can pay up to $170,000, which is insane. Now, interestingly enough, most of their customers' photolithography needs are in the low end of their offerings, in the optical spectrum, where Lamdalith's system operates. Lamdalith comes in at a low fixed cost of $25,000 for a base unit and an ongoing payment for service and maintenance of $2,500 to allow our customers to print their designs in minutes rather than waiting days or weeks for a mask maker to ship them a set of masks for every single prototype. Now, Glenn discovered something really interesting about the economics of the photomask market while he was researching for our plan. This chart shows the volume of mask sales for various feature sizes over time. The blue bars at the top represent masks in the optical spectrum, where our system operates. As you can see, it's a majority of the business that mask makers do. You would think that they would lower the prices of these masks over time, or start producing systems that, like ours, that make the prototyping process simpler for their customers. However, the higher end, more precise masks are too expensive to sell at cost, and often our competitors sell them below cost, just to generate more sales volume for masks on the lower end of the precision spectrum. So, essentially, this allows us to eat into a multi-billion-dollar market they're leaving open for us. So, obviously, there's a bit of a risk that they wouldn't like us, taking out the shins of their profit margins. So, you'd expect them to respond. However, we don't expect to be a big enough fish for quite some time for them to want to deal with us. And when we do become a threat, we expect that they'll want to acquire us rather than directly compete with us, especially since they could buy us for the price of 1 or 2 pieces of lab equipment, and we would still make a handsome profit. We're also a very young team, as you can see. But we do have 2 old hands guiding us along the way who have really solid experience in this industry. Andrew and I also have a track record of success starting businesses with other SMU professors. The other thing is, our product is as of yet untested in the market. But all we have left to do is take this working prototype that I built in the optics lab and turn it into a real product. And that's just around the corner, as Andrew will tell you.
So we're going to take this to market in 4 distinct phases. The first, as Spencer already alluded to, involves taking what he's developed in the back of the lab and turning it into a product that someone can actually use. This means designing the shell, describing the user experience, etc. And we'll do this through field testing in the local market through clean labs in the area. Our second phase is when we'll actually deploy the product. This involves the second half of the first year of our corporate life. This is where we'll leverage the network that we've developed and that of Dr. Evans and Mr. Kerr to reach out to clean rooms across the country. We've set conservative sales targets during this time period of only 2 units a month. We think that'll generate about $400,000 in demand. Our third phase, expansion. This is where we really want to ramp up our marketing efforts by expanding our sales force and hitting the advertising a little bit harder through targeted trade publications, conventions, etc. So over this phase, we'll expect to reach a revenue target of $4.5 million and be ready to kick ourselves into further gear during the third phase. Fourth phase is when we'll open up our customer base to serve international customers, especially out in Asia, which is a hotbed for the industry. It's also at this time we'll have about $27 million in revenue that will explore exit opportunities, likely to a strategic buyer, someone who can benefit from adding our product to their existing portfolio. I want to highlight 3 aspects of our financial model that we think are going to be attractive to investors. First, we have both spot and recurring revenue streams. As Spencer alluded to, the service, maintenance, other parts, etc., allows us to cushion our revenues with continual revenue coming in from the people as we build them up on our system. This is always attractive for investments, especially during times of fluctuating demand. Second, we have a flexible cost structure that's driven by low production needs, few employees, and we carry almost 0 inventory because we can produce just in response to the demand that we already have. And finally, this is an incredibly high margin business. This business can generate gross margins of close to 70%. We think we can sustain operating margins in the 50% range, which would guarantee us profitability through the life of our corporate. Now we're asking to accomplish these goals, $500,000 or 25% of the company. This will be used to fund initial payroll, product development and infrastructure, and the prosecution of intellectual property rights.
So today we told you a bit about how Lamdalith is going to change the way semiconductor devices are prototyped. Our goal is to make this process cheaper, faster, and easier, and make printing your next semiconductor device prototype as easy as finding as your lost dog. So recently we've had some exciting developments. This morning, Glenn and I spoke to the CEO of Freescale Semiconductor, who echoed the pain points we've mentioned today in the semiconductor device prototyping business. He also expressed excitement at the prospect of testing one of our early prototypes in one of their design labs somewhere in Texas. We thank you for taking the time to listen to us today, and we'd like to open up for questions.
Okay, well, thank you. Great idea. So all we have to do is put you in a lab and set you loose, and you'll come up with stuff. Huh? Can you tell me a little bit more about the intellectual property? And let me preface that by, obviously don't say anything that doesn't need to be in the public domain. But at least you could explain maybe what kind, is there a patent in the works? I assume there is, since you mentioned the legal budget. But tell me a little bit about, so there is intellectual property that has already been conflict checked or something.
Well, yeah, so we do have a rather large spreadsheet of conflicts, or potential conflicts in our Google Docs system. There are aspects of our device that are unique and novel and patentable. We again need to engage some IP lawyers.
Okay. The second question is about these mask makers. Is there any mask maker that you've gotten more acquainted with, or that you can talk to? Because there's got to be a reason why they're using these old methods still.
Yeah, because that's what's most profitable. Mm-hmm. It would undercut their primary revenue streams to make lower precision masks cheaper and make it easier for their clients to get them, basically. Because they're dependent on those for most of their products.
So over the past 10 years, there's been a huge trend towards innovation in technology. They've been really pushing the limits of the feature sizes on these masks. They're making them smaller at the 14 nanometer marks, which has never been seen before. And furthermore, they're trying to get even more memory on these chips, which has been incredible. But the systems cost, just one tool alone, to be $15 million for one of these mask houses. Hundreds of millions of dollars. And it is unfathomable. And that's why no companies, there's only one company left that actually has an in-house captive mask house, and that's Intel. No other companies, not even Texas Instruments, has their own captive mask house anymore because of these massive capital barriers to entry into this market. So to actually, you're right, cover those margins, to cover those high costs of the capital investment, they have to charge outrageous margins on technology that's much older. So,
right, and if you could bring back some of these photolithography capabilities in-house for a low cost, that's incredibly valuable, even if it's just for a small portion of the masks you actually use.
And I'll hand this over in a second. The obvious first thing that comes to mind in such a huge market with such incredible big players that are spending hundreds of millions of dollars is that finding a partner in this would be a pretty obvious thing. And so that was my question towards the mask makers, because I understand they have capital equipment to recover, but eventually they know that's going to come to an end if they get, catch on to this. So there should be one of them interested in it, and if not one, then the next one or someone. So, and just kind of helping you with credibility in that market, which is not your real background and decades of experience in this, but at the same time also credible at providing some startup capital if it really works. And that is probably the best validation that you could possibly have, is to have somebody with you. And of course, it's has been scripted carefully so you don't give up your IP, but probably one of the better ways to do it, given your status of where you are and how you came up with this.
I was going to ask you if the masks are customized, or those more commodity type. They're very customized.
Oh, yeah. Every single one is different.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's probably why they're expensive too, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's like the difference between using film and using a digital projector. Every film square is different, or every film negative is different. If you could just project something, you could just use one system and never have to, use film again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's definitely, just to add to that, that's definitely where the mask houses and the semiconductor designers, the device designers actually differ. As one develops the design, the unique design, and the other actually develops that design so they can manufacture it on their chips. So one can't live without the other. And, you need a design before you can actually put it on something, or put it on the mask and project it and manufacture that chip.
So I think you mentioned it's the optical range. So give me the nanometer sizes you're excluded from. What, below 65? Or?
Below 460, pretty much. I mean, that's pretty much the wavelength of light we're working with now. Ultimately, I expect to bring the system to, much lower than that with extreme UV and whatnot. But.
So in the nanometer size of the masks themselves, where do you operate? Because you had it from the 40s to the 250 range, right? And you had greater than 250 down. So where are you operating?
Right now, above 460.
So that's a very small piece of the market, right?
No, actually, there's a sizable chunk of the market for.
What are those products? What are the products in that range?
Well, it's no specific product, but when you're building a semiconductor device, different layers use different levels of precision. So actually, for a lot of devices, you'll have one layer that is in the 20 nanometer range, which is really precise.
Right.
And others that don't need to be that precise. You could even have some in the 5 micron range. I mean, in the one we built in Dr. Evans' class, we had one that was, actually I don't remember the exact nanometer range, but it was in the hundreds of nanometers. But then another layer that was, we didn't even care how well aligned it was. So.
Okay, so I'm having a hard time trying to understand your total addressable market, because everything we do is, sub 70, 60, whatever, 5 down to 28, and everything we're trying to do now is convert to 28. So I'm trying to have a hard time if I even care.
I totally agree with you, and I've asked the same question. I attacked him on the same end, and I said, well, how is this possible? If we're at 460, and then we're talking 250 and greater on that graph, I mean, who cares what it is? I don't know the distribution after it's greater than 250. And that was my biggest concern. And I approached that when I spoke with the CEO of Freescale this morning, and I said, is that going to be an issue? And we spoke with their senior vice president of operations, who's had 20 years of experience in development with these systems. And he's gone and worked for Global Foundries, which is one of the technology R&D developments that just signed on a joint venture with Topin Printing, and they're located in Dresden. And that's in the 23 micron, 17 micron areas. And yes, it's very important, but it depends on what you're designing it for. So he said, we're designing for analog devices. Those can all be done with our product.
Well, probably not all, but
On the large majority, it's nothing that we're talking about a very niche market. We're talking, who's using this anymore. This is still a very justifiable product, and it's a justifiable service that a lot of companies truly desire.
yeah. And actually, I mean, the funny thing they said was,
All right, that's good enough. I think you've got a lot of total addressable market work to do, because we're building a 60 gigahertz radio in Austin, and analog to digital needs to be smaller, especially because of the mobility devices themselves and the power consumption associated with them. So I think if you did some total addressable market, true total addressable market analysis, and or spend some time talking about how you get into these smaller ranges that are more relevant to the growing markets, because remember, a lot of those older products are end of life. And then I think you really are weak on your intellectual property discussion. This wasn't present at all in the discussion. I think the good doctor might remember me simply because I'm the guy that backed Photodyne out of SMU when Dr. Dean Segunda was here, and that's when I was invited to the engineering school board, and I've been sitting on it ever since. Photodyne's been a long slog, but again, it shows that real stuff can come out of the lab, so press on. I will say, in wrapping up, that beyond those weaknesses, I think you guys, from a team perspective, could probably head to Rice and do quite well.
Thank you.